Marco Longhi, buongiorno.
Gloria, buongiorno. Come stai?
Sta bene, but my Italian runs out fairly quickly after that.
That's fine.
How is your Italian?
I'd like to think it's still fluent, but there is a case of use it or lose it. So I'm very happy when my father comes around to say hi, because I just switch over and it just reminds me, keeps the cogs turning.
So I grew up Italian,
Yeah.
but in Bradford. You grew up Italian.
In Rome.
In Rome. What was it like growing up?
The Eternal City. It was brilliant, but of course you don't realise where you are and what you're experiencing when you're still only a child.
You were elected in 2019, part of the Red Wall victory. Did you feel at home when you entered Parliament? Did you feel like this was a place where you fitted in, or one where you struggled?
There are probably several different answers to that question. It felt surreal initially. You probably felt that yourself, Gloria. It felt, how do I run with this? It was several weeks before I even had an office. I was living out of a rucksack and being asked to work in the library on a desk, and I didn't have an office in Dudley. And they don't tell you this before you stand for Parliament, that you become an employer and you're responsible for staff and that sort of thing. So I had to find an office, which was all down to me. Parliament doesn't do that for you, and employ people. So all of that was quite a big ask at the time. And I think I was one of the early adopters of COVID, because I was on my knees health-wise straight after the election for probably about 2 months, with very similar symptoms to the ones we describe are those are COVID symptoms. So
tell me about that. When were you struck by these symptoms?
Just before the election, actually. And at the time, there was talk about this virus, perhaps in China. Oh no, it's not in the UK, etc. But yeah, I think eventually, when the full inquiry and the full study is done on COVID, there'll be no doubt PhD students who will do a study on the whole COVID experience. I think we'll find that it was in the country a lot sooner than any of us thought of it. If you remember, they were tracking a particular individual who came to the UK and in the south, and they thought that was the very first person who had it. I think it was in the country before then.
What were your symptoms?
Very short of breath. So I stay in the hotel across from Parliament, just crossing the bridge, breaking into sweats. But that lasted for weeks and weeks.
And this is just after you're elected,
symptoms.
So sort of late 2019, and it went into early 2020.
I can honestly say it was the beginning of March before I started to feel more like myself.
Really?
Honestly.
Which is when we all learn in a big way.
We have COVID and everyone's going into lockdown.
So
that was then, now is now.
You get this big job, you're obviously feeling really ill, but I'm really happy at the same time, but really ill. Once you'd got did you feel like there's a lot of people like me in here? Or did you feel like, I feel an outsider in here? Probably
more of an outsider, if I'm totally honest. When people talk about the Westminster bubble, the establishment, the way of doing things, and then I think about Dudley people, Warsaw people, Black Country people, they are like planets apart. And I want to absolutely stand true, because I am an elected representative, and this is a representative democracy. I want to represent the people who I grew up with, who mean a lot to me, the salt of the earth people, who are the Black Country people. And no, I would have to say a number of the rooms and corridors in Westminster Palace is not representative. So I'm part of that change, and many of the 29 intake have brought about that change. And I'd like to think the Conservative Party has changed in many ways in that respect.
Do you think your intake have been treated with respect by perhaps some of your more establishment colleagues, more traditional Conservatives?
I can speak about my own experience, and there are MPs who've been there some time that I would have only ever seen on TV before, who some of them made a point of getting to know me and every other new MP, and very friendly and outwardly going, and that's great. Others who probably wouldn't even acknowledge you. And I think that's just the way it is, but that's cross-party, I guess. I think that's, there's 650 MPs, and amongst those, there are the more sociable ones and those that are less. But so no, my experience, but overall, has been a positive one, with caveats.
There has been a reasonable level of feuding in your party. Is that difficult to deal with, not just practically or politically, but psychologically and emotionally?
It is difficult for me because I realized very early on that if you want to be a mover and shaker and make things happen in politics, you have to decide fairly early on whether you're going to be a team player or not. And one of the things that I find very sad is when I see people who I would otherwise admire really give hostile speeches, against the government, or especially against Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister. And I struggle with that because I have to then decide for myself, is this person being self-indulgent? Are they full of their own self-importance? Are they putting themselves ahead of the team effort, which I give a lot of importance to, as I've said before. So I do find that kind of thing very interesting. I'm sure you remember from your own time, Gloria, that there's all of these WhatsApp groups as well. And there's literally dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And I'm a little reluctant to play a part in them because I hate it when any impression could be given that there's a party within a party. But what I also realize is that if you want to bring about change and influence amongst senior decision makers, you have to have the ability to have that influence. And sometimes if you're just standing there alone, you're one voice. So there's that
Tension.
There's that tension, there's that tightrope that you have to walk. And I guess every MP will be judging where they're, how they walk that rope.
And you mentioned the WhatsApp groups.
Yeah.
How do you feel when some of the contents of those WhatsApp groups end up in newspapers?
Well, there was a WhatsApp group created for the new intake, and I was like a keen participant in the beginning. And the moment I saw that one of the conversations had made it into the papers, I actually left the group. I think I'm only one of very few who are not part of that group. And one could argue, well, you can be a member and not contribute and just basically see what is happening on there. But I just didn't feel comfortable. I remember early on, there was a conversation that was being had on one of the health support groups.
Health support, as in literally health support or health policy?
Health support, so a WhatsApp group.
Yeah.
And I trained as a pilot. I didn't mention this earlier, I suppose, and I know why planes fly, and one of the things I know about them is their oxygen systems. I'd made a comment on there, and I was actually originally thinking about cruise ships, and I remember the SS Canberra that went to the Falklands and acted as a warship, and I thought, why don't we have hospital ships that we can move around the United Kingdom and perhaps even send to other countries who are perhaps struggling even more than we are. And then I thought, well, we have some big airliners as well that we can fly into different countries. And someone had leaked what I'd said in a very sort of placid way. You're a brand new MP, so it's not the big eye. Certainly not from me anyway. And they put it on Guido Fawkes. You must be aware of it. Oh, this crazy guy, Marco, saying this, saying that, and who does he think he is? And then Guido made out I was some sort of idiot. But a few weeks later, Guido apologized to me, and I'm told that it's the first time they've ever done that. So, they found out, and other countries actually picked up and ran with that idea. Because it's all about, when you have COVID, the thing that people need the most is oxygen in their systems because the lungs are getting clogged up. And I thought, well, if all you need is oxygen, well, on a plane, you've got those oxygen masks, haven't you? And give people extra oxygen.
So you're right about the number of WhatsApp groups that exist for MPs. I was a member of lots of them. You are a member of some of them, but you've left one of them. So can you give any advice to MPs? Life is okay without WhatsApp groups?
Life is absolutely okay without WhatsApp groups. And, I have a great relationship with my whip. He's absolutely brilliant. I consider him, as much as anything, a friend now and a mentor to me.
The whips should be nice to you because you haven't rebelled. And that's quite unusual in the 2019 intake. Any regrets?
No personal regrets. Regrets that maybe things didn't happen a different way. I think I struggled most with, as a parliamentarian, was voting for the increase in national insurance. I'm one of the people who would think that rather than, as a conservative, for me, my ethos is grow the economy, and it's through growth rather than stifling growth through taxes that you will bring in more revenue into the coffers for the Chancellor. But if you tax people more, they will spend less. But you know what? I'm not the Chancellor. We've been through some crazy times. We've borrowed 420 odd billion pounds. As the words were, we've wrapped our arms around the country, around people, individuals, businesses, and spent a huge amount of money. So there was that vote, and then there was the Owen Paterson vote, which I really struggled with. But the way I interpreted it was, it's a vote in confidence in the Prime Minister. And there is no way I was going to throw my leader. I am a loyalist and I'm a team player. We all know that the Prime Minister has acknowledged that that wasn't the right decision at the time and subsequently reversed it. And that's it. You move on from there. No one's perfect, Gloria.
No one's perfect. Not even politicians.
No.
Finally, one of your colleagues, parliamentary colleagues, was murdered, Sir David Amess. That put a big spotlight onto the security and safety of MPs.
So he was one of the MPs that made a point of coming to talk to me. He's been around a long time, and we have offices close to each other on the 3rd floor on 1 Parliament Street, a building I'm sure you're all familiar with. And you go up in the lift's door open, and they open right in front of his door. And there's been a candle there for several weeks, burning away. And as a Catholic as well, I've felt that quite. It's been hard. It's been hard. So
has it made you think about your own security and safety?
More so for my friends and family than probably for myself. I could see genuine fear in my wife's eyes and my daughters. I have 2 daughters, 21 and 18. And I was having to persuade them, no, it's going to be okay, it's fine, when actually deep down, I had my own concerns. So we have beefed up security, both at the office in Dudley, and then when I go out for surgeries. But I have to keep saying to myself, we can't let these people win. And it is about representative democracy. I need to be seen to be accessible at all times. So I do have someone now who is sitting in the background at my surgery, and that person assesses risk. I used to have pop-up surgeries. I used to advertise it on Facebook. I'm going to be here, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. Please pop by if you can. And I'm being told, I'm being advised, Marco, don't do that.
That sounds very sensible to me. I would like to say thank you very much. You've been very, very open about your experience of politics. It's been very interesting. And I'd like to end, if my Italian was any good, by saying stay safe in Italian. But my Italian's rubbish. So,
non ti preoccupare.
It's not don't worry. My gosh, is that don't worry?
Yes.
No, I want you to worry. I want you to stay safe. Marco Longhi, it's been a pleasure to talk to you.
It's been all my pleasure. Thank you.